Thank you all for joining us for the Superstars in Business Application Workshop. It's an exciting year. It marks the Superstars in Business Awards 25th anniversary. So I wish you all of the best of luck in filling out your applications, and you've got some great tips and advice coming your way through our panelists. A few housekeeping notes is the chat feature will be monitored. So if you have any questions you want to ask as we go through, just put them in the chat. I'll go through them and we'll have a Q&A after the discussion. So we'll address them at that point. At this time, I want to introduce Mike Vanderslice. He's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Environmental Alliance, who is also a past Superstars winner. And he's served on our Superstars in Business Selection Committee for 5 years. And was the chair in 2020. And we're happy to have him here with us this morning. So welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, Chip, one of our panels, was nice enough to show us. We won in 2011, over a millennia ago. And it was cool. So I've been through the ringer with you folks. I've done the application myself, kind of know what it takes to win, and hopefully we'll convey that today through our panelists. But over the last 25 years, the State Chamber and the members of this planning committee have worked pretty hard to tweak the application to what it is today. We do our best to kind of keep it as painless as possible for you when you're filling these applications out. It's really designed to challenge businesses and nonprofits to really take a hard look at themselves, their organization, put their best foot forward when they're applying. So our panelists today, we have 3 of my esteemed colleagues. They're also on the selection committee. We have Pam Cornforth of the Ronald McDonald House of Delaware, Christa McLaughlin with Whisman, Giordano-N Associates, celebrating 50 wonderful years in Delaware, and Mr. Chip Rankin. He's with EBC Carpet Services. So if you don't mind, real quick introductions, if you know. We'll start with Pam.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and I hope you learned some great tidbits this morning. As Mike said, I'm with the Ronald McDonald House of Delaware. I've been here for probably 24 years, and one of the highlights of my career was when back in 2003, we won the Superstars in the nonprofit category, and then a couple years later, we were awarded the Awards of Excellence. So, and I've been part of the Superstars Committee and the Small Business Alliance really probably since about 2005, 2006. So long time participant, long time reader of applications, and long time commitment to finding, the greatest, superstars each year. So it's a great committee. So someday, if you have free time, I encourage you to take a look at joining that committee as well. So just a little bit about me.
Well, thank you, Pam. What about you, Christa?
Hi, everybody. I'm Christa McLaughlin. I'm the marketing manager with Whisman, Giordano-N Associates. As Mike said, celebrating our 50th year, so we're very excited about that. Just a little bit about us. We were an Award of Excellence winner twice, earlier in the 2010s and then also in 2019. And then we turned around and came back a bit stronger. In 2020, we actually won in our category. One of the things, and will be discussed later, is that you'll get a lot of feedback on your application. And take those notes to heart. They're coming from the committee, and that, in terms of our case, it only made our application stronger the following year. So not saying you won't win on the first time out, but if you do get feedback, do take it to heart, because that's meant with the absolute very best of intentions. So thank you all for being here. It was a really positive experience for us, and I hope that's your takeaway as well with the program.
Cool. Thank you, Christa. And last but not least, Mr. Chip.
Thanks. Glad to see everybody on the call. Our quality story goes back even a lot longer than this process of 25 years. We started with Delaware Quality Awards and Malcolm Baldridge process in the early 90s, and even ISO 9000 and some other things as well. But when we found this application process in 1999, we applied. We won the Award of Excellence the first year, and won the award in the year 2000. And ever since, I've been involved in the program to help write the program, help do the little hints we're going to talk about, and then been on selection committee to help other companies in Delaware with this trail of how to start and how to improve themselves using an application process like this. So everything from applying to getting feedback, I hope helps every one of your companies.
Well, thank you, Chip.
Yep.
And by being on this call, it really does give an advantage, unless people are clever enough to find the recording and then watch it later. We encourage that as well, or watch it again. If you're applying, you're on this call right now. We really will try to help you navigate the application. There are some changes this year that we're going to go through. But again, making your lives easier to get the applications done in a timely fashion, but also a deep dive into your organizations to see if you are, a superstar in business. The basics, there's 2 forms, one's for businesses, one's for nonprofits. There's some basic rules for the applicants to follow. They're outlined on the first page of the application, which is online. The applicant has to be in business for at least 3 years, a minimum of 3 years. And I think the way they break it down, less than 150 total full-time employees. But today, Pam, Christa, and Chip, they're here with us. As you've already heard from them, they're on the selection committee. They're past winners. They've gone through the gauntlet of doing the application, which it used to be a gauntlet. It's actually pretty straightforward now. And we even put limits on the amount of words you can put in so that you have to more creative thinking when you're putting your application, because we've seen some applications where there's like 1 bullet of content, and then we've seen where it's 2 pages of content for one response. So I guess, Christa, you're our most recent winner. Could you give us a little bit your experience applying for the Superstars in Business Award? Any
Sure.
advice?
Well, I'll give you my experience. Whether or not you take it advice is completely up to you. But as Mike and I mentioned in the previous winner, and as I mentioned in my introduction, we were an Award of Excellence winner in 2019 and then reapplied in 2020, and then we actually won in our category. And for us, it was a very positive experience because we can all work pretty much anywhere. I mean, you need to ask yourself, why do I work the places that I work? Why do I do the things that I do? And I think why I saw this as such a positive experience through the process is it gives you a deep dive into, we all get caught up in our day-to-day, right? I mean, we have emails and you take care of the surface stuff, but to really dive deep and to take an appreciation for where it is that you choose to work, or, in the case of nonprofit, whatever mission it is that you serve. So, one tidbit is that sometimes we get a little feedback that the questions may sound the same, or it seems like there should be the same answer for same question. That's not the case at all. So when you look at each question, really think about it. There are notes above each question. Take those to heart. I will tell you that I was one of those, shall we say, nerds who came back and watched this committee session a couple times during the application. And honestly, I made a tick list and I was just making sure I hit all the points that the committee said they were looking for. And it really made the process straightforward. And Carrie later on will go on to all the actual benefits of winning, which we found really positive. And I keep saying the word positive. I don't know why I'm stuck in that rut, but it just really was. So take that to heart. And the committee is here and the chamber is here for you as you go through the process. If you have any questions, like if you're feeling a little bit stuck, don't hesitate to reach out, because those of us who are involved in this committee and involved in the program, my gosh, Chip, since the onset, clearly care about the program and would love to help you succeed in your application process. So I'll stop there.
That's good. That's good. And speaking of Chip, I'm going to bounce this one to you. Christa mentioned the application and picking up tips from this. So you are the guru of the application. You spent a lot of time kind of refining it over the years. You're only 30 years old. I don't know how you pull that off. But at this point, looking forward, in terms of the structure of this new application, what's a good application? What are some things you're looking for? What are some maybe things to avoid, the don'ts?
Okay. One of the first notes I got was to remind everybody about the 450 word limit. We get between 20 and 30 applications a year, and there's a really good committee looking at all these, and we do read every single one of them. So it is important to reading applications that are concise and not sort of run off on all the answers. And our feeling there is if you can make this concise, then you know what you're talking about, and it's not just blabber. It's it can be written well. So we think we've given you enough words for those questions. So that's why the limit's there. There's a lot to read. All right. I do want to spend a little bit on the tips and the notes that we give you for each question. Mentioned a few times already. You could use it as a checklist. Smaller companies might not be able to answer all of those. They might not have everything to be able to tick it off, and that's okay. Know that in future applications, or as you're growing the process of your company, that should be a pretty good framework for what you might be missing. This thing is broken up into 7 areas, these questionnaires. And there's a reason there's 7. That goes back a long time in the history of quality awards and applications, now performance excellence applications. There's always been this big 7, and breaking down in those 7, there's things that we look for. The tips that are the most looked for by all of us on the selection committee have to do with metrics or actual numbers, a lot in the financial area, but really it's in every single area. And the reason this is important for this application process is we want to know if you're operating and doing things by fact and not by feel. Okay, and there's a big difference there. So if it's important to you, you should be measuring it. And if you're measuring it, even if it's your first year of measuring it, we want to know what's important to you. And that's our feeling. If you can show us some data and that you've been doing this and measuring for 3 years, we know it's important to you. And that's a big thing to somebody like me who's looking to see if this company is going to be profitable and be in place 20 years from now, if they've got key metrics that they're watching, that they're looking for, and things that tell them that they're doing things right. Do they have things flow charted? Do they have do they do a strategic meeting every year? Do they have outside people come in? Do they measure themselves against other companies in their industry at all? Any benchmarking at all? Those types of things, how you run your business from the inside is what we're looking for, not necessarily what your brochure says about your product to your customers. Okay, and I want to make sure we make that really clear. Not that there's not room for that marketing idea or how you sell to your customers and how important you are to your customers, whatever. But we want to know how you make sure that all your products or all your services are exactly right and your customers can count on them and your future customers can count on them. And then do you get feedback from your customers and how do you use that to improve the company even more? Those are some of the key things that we look for, especially in those first couple questions. One of the important ones for me is the mission statement or vision statement or statement of values, or even if it's a tagline that you guys all sort of build yourself around and remind yourself of how you go to, and do you share that? Is it on the back of business cards? Is it on your website? Is it on your vans? Is it on wherever that is? How do you get that message through all the employees and all of them know that we're pulled together around this one idea, right? And so we don't tell you that you have to have a mission or vision as it's classically stated in all the books that you can read about it, but what is it that pulls you guys together? What's important to the owner when they founded the business? What continues to be important to rally all your employees around? We need to know that in one of those first questions. Okay.
Yeah, and that can be like a tagline, and then just embellish on that tagline.
Yeah.
That's important. What Chip hit the nail on the head. We a lot of times when I see an applicant, I'll look their website out, and a lot. I know Chris is like this. If I see the exact same thing, a regurgitation of the website onto the application, it's just like, nah, it's cool. We want to know more about your company, more about you as a culture, you as an organization. Thank you, Chip, for that response. I want to bounce this next one to Pam. Pam's on here, right? There she is.
Here I am.
I lost you for a second. Pam, she runs a very, very important and integral nonprofit in the state of Delaware. The Form B is for nonprofits. For the folks from nonprofit organizations on this call, if you could share what's different. What's different in the nonprofit application? What specifics that would be
Well,
different?
so one of the things that, why it's specific, to the nonprofit, but it also applies to the other applications. There's like 3 things that I always look for. One is the organization is sustainable. Will I see them in the news and in the paper 5 years from now? What story can you tell? I mean, while metrics are good and important and it shows your sustainability or how you measure your effectiveness, but tell us a story. Tell us why, as a nonprofit, you make a difference. Why do you stand out as a superstar? Tell us, not in numbers, but show the impact that you're making in the lives of, someone, or in the arts, or whatever your domain is. What is that impact that you're making? So really look at those types of things and helping us feel what you're doing is important in the state of Delaware, and that you're doing it really well, or you're the best of your, of the nonprofits. The other piece that I always look at is, in the nonprofit world, we write a lot of grants, so we should be able to tell our story in very succinctly. I mean, we've been practicing this for all of our organizations, but really have someone outside of your grant writing or your marketing team read it. Maybe somebody on your program side, read the application to make sure they know what you're writing and they can attest to a clear understanding of what the nonprofit does. I mean, sometimes we get caught up in our own lingo, and not everybody on the panel or not everyone who's on the selection committee understands all these pieces from the nonprofit. So you have to have someone that's outside of, the writing and marketing side, read it so that they can say, yes, I know what this nonprofit does. I know what this impact that they're making. Yes, it's clearly written here. And make sure it's spell check. I can't tell you how many applications have a lot of errors in them, either grammatical or spell check or a lot of errors. And that just, to me, is not a superstar. I mean, the state chamber is giving you a really coveted award, and part of that is being able to communicate. So I'm a big stickler for not finding a lot of typos in the presentations. The other piece is, we've got a lot of applications to look at. 30, some years it's been up to 40, 45. I do not click on any links, because if I clicked on a link, then I would be spending all day researching it. Now, some of my other colleagues might have, the capacity and will click on links. But what I want to look at is what is in the application and what you can say in those words, because not everybody will share a link. So I try to not do all that extra work, that it's what's in the application that's really critical for my decision making. As a group, we informally score each question. We have a rating from 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. And so when I score, there are very few 5 responses, because that means you're just outstanding in every which way. A lot of 4s in there, but you really, as Chip was saying, look at the hints in the questions, answer those hints. I mean, I'm just saying the same that Chip said, but in a little bit different way. Those are the things that we're really looking for. So for me, it's, are you sustainable? Do you tell a story? Do I know what you do and the impact that you're making? And is it well written? And so those are just some pointers that I have for the nonprofit application.
Pam, quick question on, I know in the nonprofit application, there's like something with the finances that can get tricky.
Right, there's some ratios, but those ratios are standard. I mean, they're really, you should be able to produce those. We know Charity Navigator and, all the other, Better Business Bureau, nonprofit, they're all looking at those, ratios. And so if you have trouble calculating it, it really can come easily off of information on your 990 or in your audited statements. If you're unsure of what those ratios are, either give Carrie a call or give myself a call, and I'm happy to walk you through it. But really, that's why, bring in your finance team to take a look at it. It really is, measuring, some of your cash flow and, where your program expenses going. I mean, we all know in the nonprofit world that a majority of your expenses should be program related. And yes, there are general and administrative and fundraising expenses, but we all know the different ratios, and tell that story. And if for some reason you've got, tremendously high fundraising expenses, explain why. Don't just leave it there. Maybe you're going through a capital campaign, or maybe you're have a specific reason, or if you have a lot of cash on hand, we're raising money to make an impact and to work with our constituents. But if you have a lot of money, cash on hand, tell us why. Are you getting ready to add a new program to your nonprofit? Are you getting ready to enter into a capital campaign and you've been, holding on to some cash so that you have it on hand? Tell that story. I mean, explain what those numbers mean.
Cool. Thank you, Pam.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that telling the story, you'll see there's one question on overcoming challenges. In the year 2020 and 2021, it was pretty straightforward. Everyone talked about COVID-19. How did we overcome? How do we adapt? And 2020 was great. It was great to hear the stories. I was very intrigued on like how folks managed that hybrid scenario or completely remote in office, how they did that. Here we are, 2023. I would highly suggest don't use a COVID example unless something crazy happened, in your office recently with a widespread outbreak or something. But we don't want to see the I guess the COVID narrative used. But I'd like to round robin this one if we could. Christa, I guess, what are some tips for answering that question, for folks who are overcoming challenges, and then we can jump to Chip and Pam.
Sure. And I just want to, I don't think we've brought this up yet as a panel. When you submit an application to us, the content you share with the committee is kept confidential. So it is a good, you are welcome to share at the liberty that you want to share with the application. So don't worry that your information or your metrics are going to be shared with a potential competitor or anything along those lines. We do take the confidentiality of the application seriously. So little aside there. When it comes to overcoming challenges, really, we're looking for authenticity. Don't worry if your challenge you don't think is big enough because someone else's challenge, or, I don't know, don't get hung up in it. What we're looking for, as Pam mentioned and other people have mentioned, is we're looking for your actual story. Tell us a story. And, when you have a challenge, in general, this is just a rule throughout the application. If you say, hey, we're great. I mean, we've literally seen applications with one sentence answers. That's not really telling a narrative. So when you make a statement, just make sure you back it up with facts. If you have actual metrics, that's great. But, if you say we do community involvement, make sure you back that up. So going with the challenge, getting back to what I promise, it's your personal story, your organization story, your company's story. And if you're still going through that challenge right now, you don't have to be at the end of it. You could be like, we are knees deep in a pile of muck, and you're just going to tell us what's your plan to get through it. So, don't worry about anybody else, just focus on you and let us know what you're doing. So, that's my quick takeaway.
All right. Thanks, Christa. What about you, Chip?
Not much to add to Krista's answer. I love how she summed it up. I like ones that are HR, whether or customer focused. Maybe you surveyed a customer and you found something out, and it just maybe it changed how you how you go to market. Tell that story. You got key people together. You got an outside person to look at this. Whatever you did to react to that, and the steps taken, and the story, and how it helped you, and now the results, right? So the story and the results, the challenge and the results. Did it work? Those are always key for me in that answer.
Thanks, Chip. Last question or last response, Pam, on this one.
So yeah, it's been well covered. But it's all about, I like to understand the thought process, how you identified it as a challenge, who brought that to you. And on the nonprofit, was it a volunteer that brought it to you? Was it one of your board of directors? Was it a staff member? Or more importantly, was the challenge brought to your attention through one of your constituents that you're serving? Tell us how it came to you and what was your, short-term response and long-term, how are you going to, because you might be still in the throes of solving it, but each problem you need to solve it short term, but then what's the long term impact? So you don't, you can eliminate or have not always have the same challenge in front of you. And I know in the nonprofit world, we're challenged left and right, you know, where a lot of us can't raise the cost of a gadget or widget or anything, that we don't sell that, especially on the human services side. And so there are always many challenges. So again, it's the way you think as an organization and the way you work with your team and your staff that you can really share as you're managing the challenge. Because you know, I'm sure it's the same in the for-profit. You can't always rely on just one person. It's a whole team prospect that you and how you've managed through it.
Thanks, Pam. And I just echo one last thing would be tell your story for your organization locally, not a corporate challenge. Like corporate said, they did this in Des Moines, Iowa. Talk about you and your organization locally. I'm going to bounce to best practices. So we kind of wrapping up our session this morning, kind of looking at, you know, everyone on our panel, Christa, Chip, and Pam, they've written the applications. They've gone through this process. They've been on the selection committee for a number of years now. In the selection committee, I mean, we are around a table and we're going application by application, what was great, what was not so great, where areas of improvement. And it feels like boiler room. I felt like I was in a movie a couple of years where it gets pretty intense, and a lot of things can sway decisions. You know, someone will tell a compelling story like, oh wow, well if you really look at their overcoming challenges response here, look at how they overcame that adversity. So sometimes we'll have to revote. We'll vote once and then revote on two candidates for the winner and the award of excellence. So it's pretty it can be pretty crazy to say the least in the past, but it's great because we're so passionate about this and passionate about superstars in business. So I guess I'm going to bounce this first question to Chip. When you look at the application and we get in that kind of that scenario where we're debating back and forth, what advice would you give that this answer is better than, you know, that what answer scores above the rest? You know, this is why this organization answered this better. What are some just tips for that?
I got two that I thought of sharing. One goes right to one of the first questions. Don't assume that we know what business you're in or anything about your product. Be real specific in that introduction to describe exactly what you do to a bunch of people that don't know. Like you're at a party and somebody wants to know what you do. That's the level. Okay. Don't forget that we're from all different businesses. We don't know what you do. So make sure you explain that well in one of the first questions. The biggest thing I wanted to do on this question was to talk about not cutting and pasting. And when we talk about that a lot of times it's the difference between sort of a marketing blurb and more operationally how you do your business inside. And I want to reiterate, I know I said it before, but we want to know what is on the inside of the business and how do you make sure that product or service is done reliably for your customers from the first visit to the 100th, for the first product to the 1,000th product. How do you make sure that every single one of those is consistently good and performed by all your associates along the line? How do you make sure that all that happens predictably? That's some of the stuff that I'd love to know.
Cool. One part of this, and I was going to mention this later, but I can talk about it now too. You can include attachments, a PDF attachment to kind of paint a picture, tell a story a little bit more. One of the best attachments I saw was Christa's submission from a couple of years ago. So, I mean, there's an 8-page total. Applicants can submit attachments to, you know, include some content to tell their story, paint a picture. I'm going to throw this at Christa. What is a compelling attachment? What's a space waster?
So I wasn't sure if I was cheating, frankly, when I was putting in my attachment, because I made that 8-page a collage of everything we were doing because we had redesigned our website. So I took snippets of the website. I put in a couple snippets of like some funky ads we had run. I mean, it wasn't a disaster, I probably had like 7 different like snapshots on that last page. Because if you're hearing anything at this point, we're looking for a story. I think we've kind of been drilling that point home. So I use that last page to help wrap up my story with visuals. honestly, I kind of get a little bummed where here comes the last 8 page and like, here's the cover of our brochure. Cool, thanks. You know what that means to me? It means that one less page I really have to look at the application because I took a quick glance. I'm like, okay, brochure cover, I'm good. So it really is, as a visual person, it's an opportunity to like get that last, if you've been saying like, and we do these creative outings, or we had through a gala for the nonprofits, or we do, show us a picture of it. I mean, like, this is, again, it's a visual story, and it's, you know, it's picture book time. So I'm not saying you have to go crazy and give us a page with like, you know, 30 different thumbnails on it. But if there's something that would like, if you had a big community involvement session, like show us a picture of everyone out picking up trash or whatever it is that you did. So again, the visuals can be as much of a fact-based support of your statements as Chip was mentioning earlier with the metrics. And I have like 5 last thoughts, so I'll save them for then, but I'll step out right now.
You can save them for later.
Oh, yeah, I made notes.
No, we're good. And speaking of last thoughts, I'm going to bounce this last question to Pam. You know, a lot of folks, they'll apply, and I've seen this personally with applications. They'll apply 1 or 2 times that they haven't won Superstars yet. Maybe they got the Award of Excellence and you think they'd win the following year because they're improving upon that. So everything we throw at you, if you apply, you're going to get feedback from us. You're going to get feedback from your, the way it works, each selection committee is broken up into subcommittees. So 5 to 6 folks will have a very detailed narrative for you that Carrie will share. So she'll share that with you to kind of say, hey, on question 2, you had it. I just need a little bit more on this. And maybe that's my opinion. Christa might say something different. Hey, I really enjoyed this, but I wanted to see if you talked about this community service event. Show me a photograph of that because I'm very visual, that kind of stuff. Pam, for you, taking a step back, any additional points on that? You know, if you don't win, don't give up, so to speak.
Right. I mean, I just would encourage everybody to keep applying. And I think the piece is you need to remember that this is a unique application. What you put in other applications for other awards that you might be applying for may be great for those categories, but really tailor your application to what we're looking for as the superstars in business or in the nonprofit world. I mean, just make sure you're really hitting those points within the questions. And, because that's what we're here. We're looking for something a little bit different than what other groups are looking at. And while you may want to talk about all the awards that you may have been given or that you've applied for, that doesn't really tell us what you do and how you make an impact. So I think that message of storytelling and impact and growth are really critical, not always using, other metrics from other organizations to tell us how great you are. I mean, it's a unique application and we want to hear unique things from you. And really, again, not a marketing brochure, but really something that speaks specifically to what the state chamber and the selection committees are looking for.
Cool. Thank you, Pam. As we look to wrap this up, we want to leave some time for questions as well. Any last advice from our esteemed panelists? Chip, any last advice for folks?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a little bit about financials and metrics. Find a way, especially in the profit business category, find a way to not only tell us that you're growing in revenue or growing in customers, but find a way to tell us if you're profitable, whether you index the profit, whether you say you've reached the same level of profitability every year. Put in something that we can tell that you're got positive cash flow, positive profitability, that you're going to succeed. Just growth. Just a growing company doesn't do that. So find a way to put some metrics in there that we can wrap ourselves around, that we can compare you against the success of others. All right. If you need any more help on that, feel free to reach out. Okay.
And that's a great resource too. If anyone has any questions on anything, something compelling that Chip said, Christa said, reach out to Carrie and they can connect you. You know, I helped out some folks last year had some questions on their application, like, here's my story. What do you think about that? And I just was honest here. I think you need to talk more about your story, not corporate America story. And I think it helped their application. Last advice from you, Christa?
Okay, I numbered them, so I will be very specific. Okay. I just want to say, in general, give the application the time that it's due. If you think you're going to crank this out in an afternoon, it's not going to be the application you hoped it would be. In my case, I gave it probably a few weeks, in the sense that, like, I'd be making dinner and a thought popped into my mind and I would scribble it down and then, like, work that into an answer because I was thinking about it the whole time. That's one thing. So give the time that it's due. You definitely want to talk to other members of your team. In case I'm the marketing person, so I went around and knocked on, like, my HR person's door, my managing partner's door, so I could get the metrics. Because it's not that you can't write an application on your own, but you will write a better application going to other members of your team. With that being said, no one can ever proofread their work. Going back on what Pam said earlier, even grab a family member and see, like, to Chip's point, presume we know nothing about your story. And if a family member can't read a question and follow the narrative, then you probably need to rework the paragraph. So that's a little aside. Not saying I did that, but I 100% did that. And then I just came back from a conference and everybody was talking about how they're using AI to write their marketing materials and stuff. Please don't do that for this application. It's not going to serve you well. There are free, you can run your questions and answers through Grammarly to make sure. I mean, Grammarly loves the Oxford comma, so you got to let that go. But aside from that, you can run your answers through that to make sure that you're using the right verb tenses and everything, because we don't expect everyone to be a great writer, but we do expect clean answers. I'm almost finished, I promise. Okay, so one thing I did is, like, when you do a deep dive on a content like this, I kept going back to the well of my answers, and I was using it for other applications, like that content, because it was written out so well. So you can actually wind up using this application as a resource for other applications if you put in the time and effort to it. So a little bit of work on the front end saves you work on the back end. And my very last point, and I promise it is that this is a really good feel good for, I mean, it's great for promotion. Carrie's going to go over the benefits of winning, but for your team, it's such a boost to be recognized as a superstar. So again, you're sacrificing your time. Everybody's busy, but if you put in the work and you wind up winning, like, who doesn't love to tell people you're part of a superstars team? So that's my out.
That was really good. Pam, any last advice?
Sure, just a couple things. So one, specific to nonprofits, why it's not asked specifically through that application. I always like to learn and hear when you have 100% board giving. And because that's a standard that we like to measure ourselves against, that, where are you in that? Do you have 100% of your board giving? It's not really the amount that matters. It's that if they're serving on the board of directors, that they're committed to you to invest their own funds in that. So if you have that and can report that, that is a strength to your application. And you can tell I'm coming from the nonprofit side. For everybody in the applications, there's always a question about, what's your impact in the community, and I love hearing how the for-profit companies, what they're doing to support individuals and nonprofits in the area. So that, to me, I always look at, and I'm very intrigued by it, but it has to be significant. It's not that you attend an event that is kind of telling me you don't really do anything and you're pulling at straws. So, if you've got, your leadership of your company, or, a lot of employees that go out and volunteer out in the community, tell that piece of the story too, because that just makes you a well-rounded organization, and that you believe in not only the business that you're in, but supporting the, the community at large. So those are my last two bits of information.
Great bits of information, Pam. I'm like, that's great. It's brilliant stuff. My piece of advice, Carrie said at the very beginning, this is the 25th anniversary of this. There's gonna be a lot of hype, a lot of press. So from one piece, it's the marketing. You're gonna get, they're gonna create, I don't know if Carrie's gonna talk about this or not. They're gonna come into your office or your workplace and do a video that you can keep, and you can share that on social media. You can blast it out everywhere about why you're a superstar if you win. 25th anniversary, there's gonna be more press there. To Chris's point, the culture in your organization. Maybe things are just kind of plain Jane right now, but if you win, or even to win the award of excellence, it creates, I don't know, like a sense of pride in your organization as well. So I think that's really important. So use this as even more motivation. You're like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. I have time for it. It's the 25th anniversary. There's going to be a ton of hype around it. Take the time. And when I did it, I felt like our claim to fame, one, I had peer review. I had everyone review my answers, and I wrote it myself. And then two, I took like a question a week. You have till July, so you got plenty of time. I think there's 7 or 8 questions each week. I just focus on one question. It's only 450 words, so there's not a whole lot you can get in there. So just take it one by one. And if it's the metrics, financial metrics, that one I get done this week, bang, bounce it to my CFO or my controller. Just scan this. Does it look cool? Look good? Does it look accurate? Am I blowing something up? And another thing too, bullets. If it seems like when you're doing your response and it's just really wordy and you're running out of space, here's my response: bullet, 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 bullet. And you're going to be under that 450, and it's a lot easier for us to read it, understand it, and convey your responses. I think we're at a point where we have Q&A. So Carrie, did any questions come up from an email or the chat?
Yes, so we do have a couple questions. One is, how important is it to use the superstar suggestions?
Chip, this is your thing.
Yeah, just again, you could use it as a checklist, but it is really important, even for smaller businesses that might not be able to answer every single one. You can tell us how you think about that. Like, maybe by next year, we're going to do this and this and this, or whatever. Remember, those hints are based on a framework that a lot of other organizations and a lot of other quality awards have said is important for a successful company. They need to be doing this and this and this. So we didn't pick those out of the air. So you use that as a hint about what you should have in your application. If you can't get to it yet, or you don't have anything established yet, or you have something, tell us what you have similar, tell us what's in place of it, tell us this is how you get there instead. If you can look at it like that, but try to address them.
Okay. Anything else, Carrie?
Yes, so it's more of like a comment question. A subcommittee member, you guys mentioned subcommittee members will look at websites, and then Pam said that she doesn't, so some committee members will not. And the issue was the website has the brand language, so it seemed like conflicting advice. Can you just elaborate more on using or how the committee looks at websites or doesn't?
I'll bounce this to Christa, because you're the marketing manager. How do you avoid, or how do you address that?
I don't really see it as conflicting. I see it as supplemental. The website is the face that we show the public. The story you're telling us is more of an internal story, like what you would share with someone if you're telling about like, I think what Chip said, like you're telling somebody at a party what it is that you do. So I mean, I wouldn't show your website as like, here's the answer to question 4 and give us a link to your website. That's not going to cut it. But like in the case where we had like redesigned our website, that was part of my visual story. So I actually did include a link to our website on page 8. Like I dropped in a hyperlink into the PDF. So does that answer your question? It's supportive, not replacing.
Okay. Anything else, Carrie?
If you
sorry.
applied
Pete
previous,
raised his hand.
oh, go ahead.
My question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm wondering is that if you spend a lot of time on your not on your marketing, but on the way that you present yourself to the company or to the public, and one person is looking at the website, I don't want to write it so that's probably the best explanation of what we do is what we put on the website homepage if we're doing our job correctly. And Chip said, he looks at the website. but he doesn't like to see repetition. Pam doesn't look at it. And so therefore I'm kind of wondering, do I need to sort of rewrite the mission statement, or I want to make sure that I'm getting the right message and a consistent message out. And that's really what my question is.
So
Yeah.
if I can just jump in, it's not, I don't just look at the website. It's like if you're sending me a link to read an article about what you did in the newspaper, or if you're sending a link about a video to watch. I mean, if everybody did that, we would be spending hours and hours. So, and there's a lot of people that you can tell that story without having to look at the link or going to the website. So I really look at the content of the full application and what you're able to tell throughout the whole application, rather than, just going to the website to get information or to learn about what you're doing and clicking on another link that you might serve. I mean, you can, I'm not able to do that for 35, 40 applications. So I just choose to read the entire application and use what you've been able to put in that application for information for the award. So, and I'm not the only one that does that. So,
Yeah, Peter, I'll look to see I'll look to see if the mission statement is there, or a vision or anything is shared with customers. I'll do that to do that. I usually go right to the About Us section and read more about the owners, or maybe how the company was started, more of a backstory. I know I don't get it all in 450 words. But when we do this, selection gets broken up into different areas. Like I'm always the chair of the larger businesses, 75 people and up. So I have time in those when I'm doing my real deep dive into those companies. I'll spend more time doing that kind of stuff, but I don't have time to do it for all, because we're supposed to read all the other ones because we score all the other ones too. So I hope that tells you a little bit more about our process and how we might use a website or anything else. But I do look to see stuff. What I don't like is when all we get is what was on the website over onto the application. We hear nothing about the background or how things run inside. That's what we're talking about when we say cut and paste. Okay. We need stuff that you don't have on the website.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, good question, Pete. Carrie, you have some questions in the chat. I can take this one. So Rosemary, I've heard more than once about smaller businesses. It sounds like the smaller businesses may not be able to compete effectively. Great point. And sometimes there are nonprofits. We actually talked about this, Rosemary. This happened in 2018, 2019, where we're looking at, you have one nonprofit that, I want to say it's a powerhouse, but they have like a whole marketing team on a national level that had a smaller group in Delaware to be a nonprofit, right? And they applied, they had a great application, going against another really compelling story from a 3-person organization nonprofit, right? And we look at, it comes down like the resources, right? Like, oh, they have this whole marketing machine to build this out. We try to look at that in the application too. That's why we cut down to 450 words too, so they can't blast you with a ton of content and just crush it. That's where if you are a smaller nonprofit, we really look at the content and the passion and the thought process behind it. That sometimes, I mean, if I'm looking at it, I might say, wow, I think they deserve to win this more because there's only 3 people there doing this whole application. And you can see the time and effort that was put into it. So take my advice. If it means anything, question a week, it'll make your life so much easier. Get peer review, and really will make an impact. Just because you're a smaller business, a smaller organization, doesn't mean you don't have as a better chance or less chance of winning. It just happens. I mean, sometimes when I saw that, I remember again, 2018, 2019, this happened. You could see it was like almost like a regurgitation of their marketing material from brochures and stuff. Then you had another story of someone telling a story of how they were created and a very compelling argument of why they should win, and they won. They won the whole thing. So don't let that distract you or deter you from applying it. And obviously, if you have any questions, if you want to bounce ideas off anyone on the panel or anyone else on this Superstars in Business Committee, Carrie can put you in touch with folks.
And Rosemary, just to echo what Mike's saying, like when we do the company breakdown, we do it by size category. So if you're a team of 3, you're not in the same category as the team with 150 people. So we do we do break it down by company size. So you are competing, lack of a better term, with your with equally matched resources, mostly.
That's an excellent point. I was even thinking like from a not, wait, am I muted? I'm not muted, am I? You guys hear me?
Yes.
It said I was muted for a second. Yeah, so they do have, there are different categories in the small businesses where I think it was like 25 to 50, 50 to 150, 1 to 25. And then there's the nonprofit group. So the nonprofit, that's where you get the big power struggle. But if you have a 1 to 25 organization, you know right away that the owner of that company wrote that application. You can just get that vibe from it. We had another question from Jacqueline. Delaware Skills Center is a nonprofit in education, and we were a 2023 Award of Excellence recipient. Congratulations. From Superstars in Education. Are we eligible to apply as a superstar in business in the nonprofit sector? Carrie, question for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 2 different programs. Yep. You can
Okay.
apply just as anybody else. I do have one more question, and it's if you applied previously, does it hurt you to repeat answers but beef up the same answers just based on the feedback?
Okay, Christa.
I'm going to field that one. So sometimes situations change when you look at your answer. I definitely take the feedback from the committee to heart. I mean, like I said, I was a 2019 Award of Excellence, stressed out majorly because I didn't want to backslide on my 2020 application. So I spent a lot of time on it, perhaps too much, but that was just me stressing. But I did, I took the committee's feedback and I basically made sure every one of their pieces of information were back in my answer for 2020. Some of the sense, like your vision statement, well, my mission statement didn't change. But, when I looked at the questions where I was like, there was a gap, I didn't back that up with facts, those answers became meatier. I mean, the gist is still the same because I wasn't completely off the mark. I won the Award of Excellence, but it just needed more. And when I looked at it with the feedback, I was like, yeah, that's the more it needed. So, I mean, beef it up. I mean, definitely review it. Like, don't be like, well, I throw in a sentence and I'm done. Like, still review the question, still spend the time on it, but you probably will have, in some instances, like repetitive sentences, just throwing in like an extra percentage though. And like, well, that was 5 minutes well spent. It's not what you want to present. And it's not what the committee wants to see either. Because we do remember.
Yeah, I remember specifically on certain applications, like, man, the exact same answer as last year. After I specifically gave them feedback, it's like, this is how you're going to win. You want to win this whole thing, do this and this. And they didn't do it. I'm like, man, come on. So as part of that too, I thought it was important too, when we did our application, just have peer review. So if I miss the mark on a response, have a colleague here just say, hey man, scan this. What am I missing? What am I missing? Telling the story here. Cool. Any questions? Any other questions from the group? Cool. And again, we're all available if you ever want to just bounce ideas off us or have questions. And I think, Carrie, you have some final housekeeping for us before we wrap up.
Yes. So the deadline to apply is Thursday, July 13th at 4:30 p.m. There is a PDF application that you can find online on the website, and also links to the application. I just posted that in the chat. But you must submit the application online. So the PDF application is just for reference. Everything has to be submitted online. So we do have a new form this year that automatically will keep track of your word count, and also allows text formatting. Please take advantage of that and use bullet points and the word count to help you make a complete and concise answer. We don't want to see, 1 or 2 sentences, but you've got the word count in there. Just make it a complete and concise answer. When you're finished filling out the application, you can just simply hit submit. And if you want the ability to edit the application, you're able to do so until 4:30 p.m. on July 13th, which is the final deadline. You just need to click save and then enter your email address that you would like the URL link sent to. And then you can reopen the application whenever you're ready to enter more responses or edit any responses you already did. Once submitted, you'll get a confirmation page that will appear with a link that you can edit the submission if you want as well. Attachments are able to be uploaded directly into the application, or you can send them to me through my email at kwelcher@dscc.com. Everything has to be submitted by July 13th at 4:30 p.m. And after the application closes, the selection committee will receive applications for review. They'll meet at the end of August, and winners will be announced by September. Everyone will either get a phone call or an email from me on the results of your application. And applications not chosen as superstars will get feedback after September. So save the date. The awards luncheon is November 8th at the Hotel DuPont in Wilmington. Winners receive a promo video filmed by 1440 Film Company. He does an excellent job. These videos are absolutely amazing. And as Mike said, you can use them and share them and promote all through it. Like, it's just, they're really good videos. You also have a photo shoot that will be featured on the cover of Delaware Business Magazine, along with your own article. You'll receive 2 tickets to the award ceremony at the Hotel DuPont, and you'll also receive a Crystal Superstar in Business Award. And then you also get all the press exposure and publicity that comes with being named a superstar in business. This workshop video is going to be uploaded to the State Chamber website shortly, so it'll be available for reference. You can review it. And that's all I have. So thank you for joining us today, and good luck.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Again, bounce any ideas you might have with us. Just one last thing, Mike Pfeiffer from 1440 Film Company, who does the videos, he does commercials like for big organizations. So it's basically a commercial organization, and he crushes it. He's so good. So it's going to be a really compelling story. If anything, you apply for this, you get a free commercial for your company out of it. So do what you can. We look forward to reviewing all your applications, and any questions, reach out to us. Cool.
Great.
All right, everyone.
Thank you.
2 minutes under schedule. Have a great Tuesday. Take care, everybody.